This is so great, and thank you for making time for this little discussion. I know you really are asked this quite a lot from the interviews that you do, but I would really want just in a sentence to just know when and how was this fascination for nature in you born?
Oh, in a sentence, that's hard. I think it started about 2 years ago. So I was volunteering in a castle in southern France in midwinter, caring for huge birds of prey and hedgehogs. So in the long winter nights I spent there, I was also analysing the operations of 200 major environmental NGOs. So that sort of opened my eyes to the conservation field and how easy it is to make a difference there, how desperate it is for more people to get involved. So I started Human Nature Projects, which is my own organisation, charity, a few months after that, and we've now been running for almost a year.
Yeah, because I was coming to. Is that what informed the decision to begin the Human Nature Projects, which I've seen you really doing an amazing job there?
Yes, very much so. So what I noted from some of my research was a lot of the environmental organisations that existed were having a very hard time engaging members of the public in education awareness activities, and especially in utilising volunteers. So the way Human Nature Projects is set up, all of our volunteers engage with national teams. So that sort of grassroots impact in local communities where it's really, really relevant, the actions they take, but then spread globally, of course, across more than 100 countries in our network. And they also engage in international working groups, which are skills or interest-based. So it's very, very powerful the way it's set up in acting as that entry point into environmental volunteering. So that's the idea, yes.
All right, awesome. That is well put. So I read from your website that you really work intensively with local leaders and communities, actually in 110 countries all over the world. I mean, just tell us. I don't know if you don't mind. How old are you? Come on.
I'm 17.
Oh my goodness, you're 17. You're working with global leaders in 110 countries. Come on, man. What inspires you? What moves you?
Ooh, I think it is mostly working with so many passionate young people, especially. One of the great benefits of what I do is being able to speak with a dozen leaders each day from all over the world, doing all sorts of different things, which is incredibly inspiring and motivating to be part of a community, a network like that, and to see what others are doing. So a story I like to tell is our Lesotho national team. So Justice Senkoto is the national director for Human Nature Projects in that country. And he actually came to us from the Human Resources Division of the Lesotho Olympic team. So it was an unusual sort of change in path for him, but he'd always had an aspiration to be involved in such activities. And prior to coming across Human Nature Projects, Lesotho had absolutely nothing in the way of environmental management, no government activities, no organizations that were caring for the wildlife. So now 10 months, 11 months on, they've got this quite successful national team with dozens of volunteers. They've engaged the government, got office space, internship program. They're doing education programs with schools. So they're doing a debating competition at the moment, working towards World Otter Day, partnering or hoping to partner with the likes of TED and the Wild Ambience Project. So it's quite amazing to see some of the transformations, especially in the leaders I'm working with. So I think more than anything, that's what drives me.
Wow, man, that is really spot on. Now, one thing I'm very quite aware is the fact that in what you do, and kudos for that, is that awareness is king. How do you progressively ensure that that speaks to your endeavor at Human Nature Projects to reconnect, as you love to say, the family tree of life?
Yeah, so it can be hard, obviously, getting the messaging right. Uh, the balancing act, I guess we all try and walk, is between the two sides of the story. So there's always like that pessimistic side. Obviously, nature is declining. We've lost 60% of animals since the moon landing, but also there's great inspiring stories of success. So there's quite a powerful movement of conservation optimism, which is where I try and tend to move my messaging to walk that path. So I think in raising environmental awareness, what we're trying to do is make stories that are impactful, but also inspiring and relevant to all the communities we work with. So there's many examples of success in conservation, and not only in human nature projects, but across all sorts of different ventures. So picking stories to tell and focusing it on individuals who are making an impact, very much keeping that model, I call it mass individualism. So recognizing the power of each of our leaders, of each of our volunteers, but also connecting up their impact with the collective is what we're striving for in our actions and in our messaging.
All right. Now, as you've been a cheerleader of conservation everywhere around the globe, and you work with leaders from every part of the globe, of course, you know David Frederick Attenborough, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the man who has brought the beauty of the entire world into our living room. So, uh, as you put out the point of creating awareness and all that, I mean, have we made strides? Have we made strides when it comes to conserving our mother planet?
Definitely. So I was recently doing some research of perspectives in the environmental field. So some of the people I work with, and I collected responses from 1,000 people who are invested in these sort of environmental awareness, in environmental activities. And what I found was quite shocking actually for me. So the quiz was about 12 questions long, and it was looking at global issues specifically in the environmental field. So one of the questions was, how has rhino poaching changed over the past 5 years in South Africa? And actually it's halved. So anti-poaching measures have become wildly more effective, which is incredibly amazing as a story to tell. But actually more than twice as many people chose the answer that was it has doubled. So that's one story which most people are completely unaware of, but is one of conservation's like recent success stories. So I think there is definitely a lot in the way of successes to be celebrated. What sort of scale is there on, and whether these stories are getting out into the public is a whole different matter. So recently, another piece of news was the rebounding tiger populations. So India has done an amazing effort again to try and rebound the falling tiger populations in conflict with humans, in trying to mediate between habitat loss as well. So there's definitely lots of evidence that we're improving in conservation. Conservation obviously is only about 50 years old as a venture from when the IUCN started or when the WWF started. All of these organizations are actually relatively new by some of our standards perhaps, but even in that space of a few short decades, we've seen so many advancements. We're now sitting at about 15% of the Earth's land protected, so set aside for animals, for nature. If we can get that much higher, of course, to maybe 50% or 30% in the next few years, that would be an amazing achievement, and it's looking quite possible.
Wow, indeed. Yeah, absolutely. That sounds very optimistic of you. Now, one thing I picked from your website again is something I really loved. Like our mission, you say, is to restore humanity's appreciation of Earth's amazing biodiversity, create a powerful network of nature lovers to champion for conservation. Now, of course, you've said, Connor, that you're 17 years old. How are you, as you work with the leaders everywhere around the globe, are you plugging in the young people, because these are the trustees of posterity?
Yes, very much so. We're trying to engage the younger generation, especially in conservation. There's a tremendous amount of awareness, sensitization in our youth about environmental issues which we're facing. So I think that is where momentum indeed is strongest, but especially trying to engage with the youth so that they can get involved. I certainly know in my own journey, it took me several years to get into these circles, to start volunteering with nature, even though I had some interest in the space. So it's especially important for that age bracket to provide a very easy route to volunteering, to provide that entry point which anyone from any background can access. One of the amazing things I think about what we do as environmentalists, as nature lovers, is trying to engage as many diverse backgrounds as possible. So people from all walks of life are involved in the activities of our field. So as human nature projects, we're working with youth, we're working from all sorts of skill sets, interests, countries, cultures, backgrounds around the world to try and create these bonds with each other and with the natural world for maximum impact. I think I've found in my work that engaging all those different viewpoints is something that really sets our work apart. Trying to, certainly hear from all of these different people, all of these different backgrounds, interests, skill sets is what drives our work forward, makes it quite unique and quite special for those involved.
Wow, indeed, absolutely, man. I love that. Now, one thing that really fascinates me, man. You're bubbly, you're full of life. You're really passionate about this. You're speaking like a 40-year-old man. So, you see, I don't know, I don't know how you're gonna put this out, but at times when you're young, you at times you can find yourself wallowing in that sort of cesspit of self-doubt. But I don't know. I don't know how you're hacking it, man. You're 17 years of age. You're speaking to these global leaders everywhere around the place. You're moving. I'm coming there. The other time you went to film with the World Earth crew in South Africa, man. As a young person, how are you hacking these? Do you have any secret to this?
Yeah, so certainly self-doubt does play in the equation, and I've witnessed it in countless others alongside myself. I think when I started Human Nature Projects 11 months ago, there was a huge step up for me in transitioning from the activities I'd previously been undertaking, all sorts of volunteering placements, working with different organizations, and then stepping up to leading obviously my own venture globally. That was quite the shock, I guess, for me. So I think in those early few months, I was working against the clock in a way, against my own self-doubt, also to try and create this very powerful community. And that's what Human Nature Projects has become. So along that journey, there was certainly an amount of exhilaration, sort of adrenaline, if you will, that carried through. So being able for the first time to connect across these huge geographical scales, so across different continents, and we rapidly filled out the different countries in the network. So that certainly assisted me being so passionate about the issue and being amongst so many other passionate people. So I think that would be the first piece of advice I give. If you can find an issue, an area which really drives you, which motivates you, then that's the most important thing. And secondly, you have to appreciate the smaller milestones, the successes that you come across. So I worked into myself a habit of doing like a fist pump. So something really expressive, but quite small. Anytime you get a piece of good news, someone else joins the network, you add another country, whatever it might be. But so that you recognize all of these smaller stepping stones towards the larger goal you're working towards, especially in conservation and environmental activities. We're working obviously to save the world. So being able to measure that, if you will, is very, very important. Be able to calculate your success, to appreciate every time you move one step closer to creating the change you want to make.
Wow, man, indeed, that is quite insightful. So, Connor, take me through how was it? How old were you delivering the TEDx speech? Talk.
Yeah, so I spoke at TEDx in Sydney at end of February this year, and
How was
I
that, man?
came across that opportunity through my networks, and I was amazed at the chance to share my thoughts. The speech was on evolution and how to save the world. So, looking at what we can learn from nature's processes as we move forward, trying to better coexist with other animals and to redefine sustainable development. So, I mean, recently I've been doing some research of 85 environmental and developmental factors between 192 countries. So, looking at the different correlations between all of these matrices. And what I found actually quite shocking for me. So, there's obviously quite a strong correlation between, say, GDP or development and education and health, welfare, sanitation, infrastructure, nutrition, you name it. All of these sustainable development goals are strongly correlated with a country's progress towards affluence or towards development. But when it comes to environmental factors, so in conservation, in consumption, being able to develop sustainably, then it's almost the opposite. So in some cases, there'll be a negative correlation. So more affluent countries are doing much worse on these measures, or even more often, it's no correlation at all. So all developed or non-developed countries have pretty much an equal playing field when it comes to saving animals. And that's what led me, I guess, to the subject of the speech, because I wanted to reframe the conversation in terms of how we can better move forward as nations and as communities, but also allowing those improvements to reflect back on nature and on animals. So, yes, in this speech, I was looking at 5 rules of evolution and how we can frame that in a way that will allow us to develop more sustainably and better appreciate, I guess, our place as humans alongside other animals.
Wow, indeed, indeed. Wow, that was quite something. I actually watched a bit of it. Yeah, all right. So how was it? I mean, I saw again from your profile. You know, you're with a wild crew in South Africa filming there for I don't know for how long. How was the experience there?
It was amazing, truly, truly breathtaking. I spent 6 weeks filming with them from Djuma Reserve, which is in sort of northeastern South Africa, near the Kruger National Park. So amazing wildlife. And I was out on 2 3 hour safari drives each day, filming from the back of the vehicle with a live presenter and streaming to 1 million monthly viewers. So certainly quite stressful at the start, trying to learn the skills, trying to be able to understand the platform, some of the requirements. But certainly once I got in the swing of it, I mastered the technique, and I'd had some experience with photographing, with video production, then I found it, yeah, truly astounding as an experience. I'd certainly like to go into natural history filmmaking as a career. So that, I guess, is sort of my first step on the path, and hopefully much more to come.
Wow, indeed, of course, up is what drives us, buddy. So for this while you've been able to do this amazing stuff. What is that one thing? Can you condense it to just a point that you've learned so far? Just an insight you've learned so far, so good. Working with people and being at the front line of championing for conservation around the globe.
Yes, so I think you have to believe in yourself and believe that you can make a powerful change in the world. Certainly, what I found is not thinking too much about the idea you have, not thinking too much about some of the logistics, and just diving straight in, trying to start from scratch, build from the ground up with some of the change you want to make is perhaps the most powerful way you can do it. As long as you can be very clear about what you're trying to achieve, then people naturally will respond to that, will follow you, and that's how everything starts.
Wow, indeed. What an amazing story, Connor. Because again, this platform I normally do is for young people just like you, who do not belong to the do nothing brigade. They are getting involved in changing society, and you being a cheerleader, and you've been able to do all this remarkable stuff when it comes to conservation. I'd just love, as we wind up this, you just like give your final say. Just look to the camera and just speak to any young person who's going to watch, because that is a majorly part of our audience. So just like a final thought.
Ooh, yeah. So I think my final thought would be that as a young person, we can make a very large impact on the world as long as you can frame your message in a way that's hopeful, to be able to spread inspiration through your work and just work through small successes to make the change you'd like to see.
Wow, indeed, that is straight to the point. And thank you so much for making time for this program, Connor, all the way from Sydney, Australia. Thank you so much.
Thank you.